live on Facebook, so if we could go ahead and get started, Cheryl and Dee.
Sure. So Dee, you want to provide some sort of high-level overview of the concept of zero waste?
Yeah.
Well, before we do that, why don't we start with some introductions?
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought everybody knows Dee. Dee, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, well, I guess I'm wearing my plastic pollution and zero waste hat here today as the founder and co-chair of Plastic Free Delaware. I can put some links in the chat as we move forward, but we started about 10 years ago, focused at that point on just the single-use plastic bags. So we'll talk more about kind of our evolution over the last 10 years through single-use plastics, trying to address them and moving more into just a broader zero waste educational effort and policy effort. So I'm also Newcastle County Council member for District 2, which is kind of the western half of Brandywine 100 from the city of Wilmington up to Pennsylvania and from the Red Clay Creek over to Brandmar, basically. So I try to do as much as I can in the county regarding these issues, conservation and preservation and plastic pollution, but for plastic pollution, there's not a lot we can do at the county level. So most of our work is at the state level, and Cheryl Siskin is on our working group for Plastic Free Delaware.
And I'm also involved in Indivisible Highlands and Beyond. I work with their environmental team. And I'm also on the executive committee of the Sierra Club and chair the conservation committee, the Delaware Sierra Club. I work with Dustin a lot. And I am also involved in a lot of pro-democracy sort of reforms, but all that for another day. The concept of zero waste, when I first heard the term, I was put off by it because I thought it's too difficult. And I didn't want to present the world with a concept that was so difficult that you could never achieve it, so why bother? But my feelings have since evolved as I've looked at it. It's not really it's an aspirational goal. You're never really going to get there, but it's a mindset. And I think that's what we're going to talk about more today.
Absolutely. And I think what you allude to is something that we all need to bear in mind, that it's really a continuum. It's a process of evolution, of trying to get to this elusive zero waste thing, which we know we'll never achieve, but it's sort of the goal to aim for in the ideal world, and so we all can make strides every day in doing more towards that end.
Right. So to that end, you want to talk about some of the efforts that you and Plastic Free Delaware and Zero Waste First State are currently working on?
Yeah, I thought I might give a definition of zero waste, if you would allow me to do that. This is from the Zero Waste International Alliance. There are all kinds of groups all over the globe that are working on zero waste and plastic pollution. But here's their definition of what zero waste actually means. It's the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials without burning and with no discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. So I think, so the different components of that, obviously we can try to take apart today and talk about, but so the way I primarily think of it is, I'm sure you're all familiar with the reduce, reuse, recycle, reverse pyramid. And I think we've all been inculcated with thinking mostly about recycling and that's going to save the earth and all of our woes in regarding waste and overuse of materials. But really recycling is the last resort before you then throw something in the trash that goes to the landfill. So there's a whole bunch of other things that need to come first, including reduce, repair, refuse, which is, think twice before you buy something if you don't really need it. And also the whole idea of having companies be responsible for what they produce from beginning to end. So Pepsi Cola, for instance, produces soda and they sell it in plastic bottles, but they don't care what happens to the plastic bottle after you're done with it, but they should, and they should be made responsible for that. Maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but in Plastic Free Delaware, when we were first founded over 10 years ago, our focus was on single-use plastic bags. I think everyone's very familiar with those. The fact that you don't use them for very long, a couple minutes maybe, and then hopefully you recycle them, but over 90% of them are typically not recycled or not reused. And I know some people reuse them like in their trash cans or for walking their dog, but that's the vast majority of them are not reused. So they either end up out in the environment, which was our main concern, or they end up down at the landfill, which is just a ridiculous waste of resources. And I think people don't stop to think about where plastic comes from. In the movie Bag It, they actually go around this town where the film was made and ask people where plastic comes from. And most people couldn't even answer the question. So it comes from oil or natural gas, which means that, single-use plastics that you're using are perpetuating the whole industry of extraction and refining. So, it's sort of, if we can do things to reduce that, it's only beneficial for the environment.
Well, and the concept of reducing is a whole consumption thought process in terms of, do you really need to buy that new shirt? Do you really need to buy that thing to replace something else that you already have? Or can you shop at Goodwill and find what you need instead of buying something new? So
exactly,
it's a lifestyle, right?
Exactly. And the other thing that I'm learning more about zero waste is, for what you do buy, the things that are preferred in a zero waste continuum are sort of fall into two categories. One is made out of materials that are infinitely recyclable, which is like glass and metal, or are biodegradable, so that at the very least, if it, and like a piece of clothing gets worn out, it can be biodegraded back into the earth, as opposed to plastic clothing or whatever, which I'm wearing some today, right? So if you stop and think about what you're wearing, that's one of the things that we try to encourage people to think about is wear organic clothing, really, and to minimize your purchases of extraneous clothing.
And also, I think there's a lot of clothing manufacturers and other companies that are trying to offset their carbon consumption and have a whole zero waste sort of platform that they use to mitigate the impacts that they are having on the environment, even while creating sustainable products. I was going to put together a list actually of websites, but honestly, there were just too many to choose from. A lot of places are making shoes and clothes out of plastic bottles. I know I got a pair of sneakers. They're called Nothing New. Every single aspect of those shoes is recycled something. They were a little pricey, but the thing is, if we build up demand, the prices are going to come down.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what about here in Delaware? Where's zero waste stand in Delaware now?
Well, so when I think about Delaware, I think, the two biggest agencies, so to speak, that, are in this arena are DNREC, the Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control, and which they have a regulatory side as well as an educational component. So they're approaching it from both of those viewpoints. And then the Delaware Solid Waste Authority is actually what manages our recycling programs and our landfill programs. So they do have a role to play in fostering zero waste, because our landfills are filling up and have finite lifetimes. And then what's going to happen? You have to start a new one somewhere else? Well, where? I'm not sure we could get permission to build a new landfill anywhere in Delaware, 10, 20, 30 years from now. So I think DSWA in particular is kind of walks a fine line, because obviously they're in the landfill business. Their budget is dependent on the tipping fees they get from the trash that comes in, and also from whatever income they can make from the recyclables that come in. So in that sense, I think they don't necessarily have a huge incentive maybe to reduce
trash,
to reduce trash or the amount of recyclable materials that actually earn them money. But they also recycle a lot of materials that cost them money, like electronics and styrofoam, and they take, household paint and batteries, all kinds of things that actually cost them money. So it is to their benefit to try to figure out better solutions for those kinds of things. Like, for instance, to not have styrofoam be part of our lives. Because it's really not a recyclable product. And probably the vast majority of it doesn't even get down there to begin with, because you can't put it in your curbside. But I'm sure a lot of people on this call are familiar, with the recycling rates. The diversion rates out on the West Coast are very high, like in Oregon, are I think around 60% or so. But here in Delaware, our diversion and recycling rates have been hovering around 40%. We got a little bit above 40% there for a couple years, and it's dropped back down. So I think Delaware's sort of in this stagnant place where we need to really do a lot of education to move us forward, to recycle more, but also just to reduce trash.
Don't a lot of those places have the pay-as-you-throw kind of systems, the places that have more successful recycling programs?
On the West Coast?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't cite off the top of my head who does have that, but it's something we're looking at, and it's something under consideration by the DSWA in their 10-year plan. So we actually have a webinar coming up next month, if anyone's interested in being part of that discussion. And we're trying to call it Save As You Throw, because really it's one way to incentivize reducing your own trash load,
as well as recycling.
And yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the general concept is you have to pay for your trash, but recycling is free. Exactly.
I know Chicago is one place that, Judy, I think on the call we were on yesterday, someone mentioned Chicago, and you actually have to buy your bags. So, for each bag is X number of dollars. So the fewer bags you use, the less you pay.
That's an interesting program.
Mm-hmm. So I will say that another thing that DSWA is doing to incentivize recycling is this coming July, they're actually going to accept the loads of recycling materials for free from the haulers. The problem that I see with that, and we're in conversations with them about it, is the consumer will never see that unless they change the way they do the billing. Because right now you just get one flat fee for your trash and your recycling. They aren't separated. So if DSWA starts taking recycling for free, in theory, that should be passed on to the consumer, right? But it probably won't be. You'll just keep paying that same flat fee. You'll never know that they're actually getting a pretty big discount by being able to drop off the recyclables for free. But so I'm arguing that should be in black and white, so the public can see that and see that it's cheaper to recycle than it is to throw stuff in the landfill.
So you want them to pass the incentive on to the consumer?
Yeah, I think they should, and make it clear in the billing.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And maybe then they would put recycling cans at everybody's house. I know that in my neighborhood, for example, not everybody even has a recycling can out. I have two, of course.
We have two too, as well.
Do you think we need legislation for this kind of thing?
If that's what it takes, sure. Because DSWA is sort of an independent quasi-public body. And so, I don't even know how much the legislature can dictate to them, but, certainly they should have some purview over it. And, if we can either get them to do it voluntarily or if it takes regulation by DNREC, then let's have that conversation and make that happen.
Another big area is this issue of repair. There's a lot of waste because we throw away things rather than fix them. And it generates a lot of waste. And it's an interesting audience that's in favor of the right to repair, right, Dee? It's House Bill 22, right?
House Bill 22, yes, was, it's part of a global and national movement here in the US, called Right to Repair, because if your cell phone breaks, sometimes depending on the brand and whatnot, it can be very difficult to get it fixed. Some of the few remaining places to get it fixed, you can't even open up to get inside to fix it. Some repair places can't get the parts or can't get the manuals that, would help them figure out how to repair something. So there's a whole bunch of hurdles that have been placed by the manufacturing companies, the big companies, that don't want you to fix your phone or fix your TV or fix your dishwasher or even certain components in your car. So the Right to Repair movement is trying to address all of that. And we have House Bill 22 that's before our legislature now, that would begin to address it. And one reason why it's important is that electronics are a huge component of our annual landfill tonnage. And also it's a corollary is that it would promote small businesses. I know, some of you might agree with me that like when you were growing up, there were repair places you could take your TV to get fixed. But now it's cheaper to buy a new TV or a new dishwasher than to get it fixed. And but even if you wanted to fix something rather than replace it with new, it's sometimes very difficult.
Or it doesn't make sense. It's cost prohibitive. I know I had a TV with a cracked screen. It was brand new, but the screen cracked and it became trash. I refuse to throw it away. I'm waiting for this Right to Repair bill to come in.
Well, let me just tell you, when I'm ready to throw something out, my husband will look at it. My electric, my power washer toothbrush thing broke. He says, we can order a new hose for it. I went, what? And then something else broke. We can order a different motor for it and not get rid of the whole thing. You have to think like he does, fix it.
Right. It's a mentality that, we've been brainwashed by a lot of the big companies to, by low prices, which is a whole nother thing. Like, why do some of these things cost so little? And just a mentality of kind of the American capitalistic society of buying, constantly buying new and feeling you have to have the next best thing.
And then just today, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just ordered some pre-made vegan food, and the company actually gives you a sticker to mail back the boxes they come in.
Good. That's terrific to hear about.
And the food, evidently, people have told me is yummy, so we'll see.
Good.
But I'm tired of cooking, just a side issue, but it's amazing that they'll take it back.
Right, and I think that's a growing movement as well. Judy, do you know the company's name?
Mama Says, SEZZ.
Okay.
And it's fresh food, and you can freeze some of it. I haven't tried it yet, but other people have said.
I think there's a growing movement of companies that are doing that, shipping food or even locally, selling locally in reusable containers that you take back or ship back.
Another company that recycles 1,000,001 things, but in order to say send back just a box full of, say, Tom's toothpaste, Tom's products, you need to fill up this box. So that's not going to work for me, but we could do it at Osher someday if we ever reopen and put the box stuff in.
Right, when we're back together again.
Yep. So what other sorts of legislation is coming down the pike that relates to this concept?
So I guess everyone's familiar with the plastic bag bill that went into effect on the 1st of January. And it hasn't been perfect, but we're going to hopefully have a follow-up bill that will actually expand it, as well as make it. Part of the problem right now is that the current law, which was a bill that was approved 2 years ago, allowed plastic bags that were above a certain thickness. So many of the stores have absolutely complied with the spirit of the bill in terms of not using plastic bags, only using paper or reusable. But some stores are definitely giving out plastic bags that are, about 3 mils thick. And they're not that much thicker than the ones before. So we'll, probably try to address that in some way and expand it to smaller stores. So stay tuned for that at some point this year or next year. But Cheryl has been a mover and shaker in terms of exploring other options regarding polystyrene, better known as styrofoam, and other things that generally relate to like takeout food or food service, including plastic cutlery and straws. So Cheryl, you can probably talk more about that, but many other jurisdictions around the country and around the world are doing regulations regarding styrofoam in particular, just because it's not very recyclable, and it's not the health impacts. For instance, we have kids eating off of styrofoam trays in our schools. So they're literally putting hot, wet food on the styrofoam, which is full of toxic chemicals, and then scraping it with a fork or a knife and eating their lunches. And that's just, it needs to stop. We all need to stop using styrofoam. So we are working to address that. And Cheryl's been working on the language of that bill.
The thing with styrofoam is the microplastics, they get smaller and smaller, but they don't ever go away, is what we've learned. And we don't know the long-term effects on our health, but I think there are going to find correlations. They're exploring now cellular impacts from the microplastics. And it's just not necessary. There's no reason to use it.
Exactly.
It doesn't add anything. And in Delaware, we're fortunate. We actually can recycle white styrofoam. If you take it down to Lamson Lane, they have a bin for it, but not
plastic in general. That goes back to the kind of the zero waste approach to looking at materials. Either need to be infinitely recyclable or biodegradable. So styrofoam and most plastics, or all plastics, generally can only be recycled once. They get one more life. So if you take your milk jugs and even your plastic bags down to be recycled, they might go to the Trex facility and become lumber. But once they become Trex lumber, that's it. They're not ever going to be anything else. And so it's not infinitely recyclable in that regard. And styrofoam is like the least recyclable of those plastics.
And then there's also ecoplastics we're lucky enough to have here in Delaware, which takes the plastic film and they take many of the recyclable plastic stuff, and they make furniture and bike racks and art. The art behind me actually is recycled plastic and recycled from the remnants of making the furniture and other things that they make over at Ecoplastics. And that's over on Germain Drive. And it's a great opportunity to be sure you're recycling and it's local and it's also employing people down there. Any other bills that are relevant to this? I think I had a list.
One bill we're keeping an eye on is HB 52, which is gleaning, which is regarding the donation of food. So there's already a national bill that was actually signed years ago, but this HB 52 in Delaware would just clarify and expand it a little bit to make it clear that if you are a donor of food, excess food, or even hunters, I think the main goal of it was that hunters have been reluctant, and farmers, to donate some of their excess foods and game because of potential liability. So HB 52 would clarify that they are not liable, if they donate this food. And that's a small part of a huge issue, which is, Americans are said to throw away, it's been studied, more than 1,000 pounds of food a year per person. And food and biodegradable food, materials are another huge part of what goes into the landfill, up to 40% of what goes into the landfill. So it's being able to compost biodegradable food is one aspect of that. We need to do more in terms of composting. And then, being able to reduce our waste of food and donate food that is, still edible. Like, we throw away so much food that is edible because of, expiration dates that are sort of misleading, or just people concerned about, or people buying, sort of the American habit of buying too much food, or overestimating what they need, and then ending up throwing a lot of it out. So that, again, it's part of an educational need to sort of change the mindset of Americans. So this HB 52 is just a small piece of that, but hopefully more to come.
Isn't something like composting at your local level or your house level or the community level a way to deal with some of that food waste?
Absolutely. And so everyone should, if you don't have composting at home, if you're able to, if you have a little bit of room in your backyard or whatever, Denrec sells compost bins every spring at I think about half off of their normal cost. And that's one way to get started in sort of changing your mindset regarding food waste. And, even like when you're chopping up your vegetables, the biodegradable stuff that would otherwise end up in the trash can all be put in a compost bin. So we definitely encourage individual compost bins. Unfortunately, that is something that Denrec is looking into, because when you get to the community compost level, trying to do things as a group, like let's say for a neighborhood or whatever, you actually have to have a permit. So it gets a little more complicated, and Denrec is apparently looking into ways to loosen up the regs that can somehow encourage in community composting. But I think they need to have a big push in that area over the next few years to solve this issue, because people are probably familiar with the fact that we used to have an industrial compost facility here in the Wilmington area. We actually had one years ago that was shut down. And more recently, we had one that was just picking up from restaurants, and it was also shut down. So we have actually kind of taken a few steps back regarding industrial composting.
But compost is a great way to deal with some of the waste, at least at your house level.
Yeah.
What about at the federal level? What's going on?
Well, the one bill we've been following is a bill that was introduced in the previous Congress and is now being reintroduced now, called the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. And it's a very wide-ranging bill, and deals with some of the producer responsibility aspects that we've been talking about, and would actually, it would be great in the sense that it would obviously be a national bill, whereas right now all the states across the country are kind of doing their own thing. Local governments are doing little bits and pieces of it, but this would put a national focus on the issue of plastic pollution. So we'll be hearing more about that in the coming days. And if folks want to reach out to our 3 members of Congress and encourage them to sign on, that would be great.
So what, do you have some specific tips you can give people to how they can change what they're doing right now to help with this zero waste problem, to help achieve zero waste goal?
I think, well, first of all, I guess if anyone wants to get involved with our work, we welcome folks to join our working group, and Plastic Free Delaware and Zero Waste First State, kind of approach things on 2 levels. One is educating. We have programs all across the state just trying to, raise awareness about these issues, which is part of changing the mindset of individuals, as well as those elected officials and agency officials that are making policy, and then and actually advocate for those policies ourselves. So that's one way you can get involved and be an advocate for these bills that you and I've been talking about. And then the other thing is just to start at home. Like we said earlier, again, don't get overwhelmed by the big picture, but maybe each month choose one thing that you can sort of create a habit, whether it's using a reusable bag when you go shopping, and not just to the grocery store, but to all stores. And then, trying to, like Judy said, maybe purchase things in reusable containers. I know grocery stores in some states have much more available in terms of refill stations, all kinds of things, cereal, shampoo, many, many things. And you just don't see that here in the grocery store. The demand isn't there. So we all need to speak up and ask for these things.
You only see them at a place like Newark Co-op.
Exactly. But there are other grocery chains I've been to, for instance, in Montana, that had aisles full of them, and they weren't
the bulk stuff at Whole Foods and Sprouts right now. The Sprouts, they're bagging them because of COVID, but that's the way to do it. Also, the bulk products that they sell at Whole Foods.
Yeah,
I think it's Wegmans that, but I could be wrong, that one of the bigger stores makes the bags that you put your produce in are compostable.
Whole Foods has these green skinny bags, these green, they feel funny. They feel funny, yeah. But
I put them in my compost at home and it didn't really work. So I buy mesh bags, produce bags. You can get a pack of 10 on Amazon, different sizes, and I just throw them in my reusable bags and use my produce bags when I buy produce, or I just buy them loose.
But the problem is we go to get organic, say peppers, and they come already in cellophane.
Yeah, well, so I won't buy those.
I want organic. I don't want to buy the non-organic.
Right. They need to stop doing it. And sometimes they're even on styrofoam and wrapped in plastic. And instead of plastic, for example, I use beeswax. They come, again, those sheets come in all different sizes. I have some really big. So if I make a big dish and we have leftovers, instead of washing out that pan and putting it in something else that needs to be washed again, I'll cover it with the beeswax. I try to remember that step, even reducing water consumption in dishes and stuff like that, and just trying to make this a mentality that you're helping the planet with every little thing you do and encouraging others. Another thing I do is I have a set of bamboo utensils that I keep in my pocketbook. So if I'm out somewhere and get something to eat, I've got a spoon, a fork, and a knife always with me. I've got a portable straw with me. I can do whatever, and I have my water bottle that I use all the time.
Yeah, I used to use those compostable bags for my compost because they said, oh, so I'm like, all right, well, I'll just pour the whole thing in there, into the composter. And, they break down, right? But you're talking still about, a long, long time past your normal food waste compost would be. And then I got into it with a couple of people with the plastic bags. They kept saying that they were compostable because they're green or they have trees on or whatever. And it's just like, no, they're not compostable. You can recycle them still, but they're not compostable. Nowhere on the bag does it say it's compostable.
Well, and that brings me to
Need to be careful of greenwashing.
a really important point. A lot of the containers now, they say they're compostable or recyclable, but they're not, because they are contaminated with the food that touched them. So they actually can't be recycled because of the food. So that's another problem that we sort of have to deal with in this system, because people are starting to go to compostable materials, but we don't have a commercial compost facility.
Yeah.
Cheryl, we got a question maybe for you or Dee from Tish over on Facebook. Said, what do you think about biofilm? I'm not familiar, but maybe one of you guys are.
Do they mean like bags, shopping bags that are biodegradable? Is that what they mean? Maybe.
Well, it's about a 30-second delay on Facebook, so I'll ask, okay. And I'll bring it back.
If that's what they mean, you guys were just talking about it. I think you have to be very careful, because some stores, I just went into the Acme and they had one of those thicker plastic bags, and that I mentioned earlier, and I said, oh, it's a shame. I said, it's a shame you're giving out plastic bags now. And the cashier says, oh, they're not plastic. I said, what do you mean they're plastic? And he's like, no, it's biodegradable. And I said, well, I took one and nowhere on it did it say anything about being biodegradable or compostable. And but I do know there are bags out there that are biodegradable, but they're really just plastic film with some chemical that's added that makes them break down faster. And it's just greenwashing, because it's still bits of plastic. It's just going to get those bits of plastic out into our waterways and into our food chain even faster. So it may not kill an animal along the way, because maybe it'll break down relatively more quickly, but that's debatable unto itself. You have to be really careful, read the label, and the word you want to look for is compostable, not biodegradable. So, but biodegradable also, these, people, when we started working on single-use plastic bags, people would say, well, isn't the answer to get biodegradable bags, made out of corn or whatever? And the problem with that is that you're still perpetuating that single-use mentality. So we want to get away from that. And, plastics are great. They obviously have a major role in our lives for all kinds of things. But what we're focused on is trying to stop using the single-use plastics that there are alternatives for, and that don't have all the harmful effects that these single-use plastics have. So we're trying to change that mindset. So if we just develop a bag that's biodegradable but still single-use, you're not really solving the issue or changing the mindset to a more zero-waste approach.
Yeah, and I wonder if I don't know enough about the chemical makeup of that stuff, but I know they use corn in a lot of different ways in our society now, which is alarming if you look at the history of corn. But anyway, yeah. I wonder how they break down. I mean, it's still your turn, no matter what you're using to develop the polymers and the basically plastics. I mean, it's still, I feel like it's going to break down and possibly have some of the same repercussions. I don't know.
Exactly.
How do you think about that? Yeah.
Okay. And then you're using all that cropland for corn to make plastic, which also doesn't make sense, right? I mean, there's other reasons that it's just a bad idea.
What about bamboo? What do you think of that? A rising alternative.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be good for certain things.
What did you say?
Bamboo.
Oh, bamboo.
They can plant it and it regrows very quickly. So
I know they make reusable bags out of hemp too, and which is similar in the sense that it's rapid growth and whatnot. But I guess you want to be careful about the agriculture impacts of that sort of thing. But yeah, they have to be made out of something, right? So if it's biodegradable, truly biodegradable, compostable, ultimately that's better than plastic.
There's evidently a problem, a smallish problem with bamboo, that it's being grown in places more than usual and taking away other.
Right.
I can't remember the whole story, but I was going to just go back for a minute to the use by and the expiration date. Evidently, the USDA maybe is changing that to make it more logical. I'm not sure where that stands.
That would be a great thing to do at the federal level, because those dates are bull hockey.
Yeah, good work.
Yeah, that would be great.
I have constant fights with my kids because they say, oh, it says, you know, use by or sell by a certain date. And I'm like, smell it, taste it. If it's still good, we can eat it.
Exactly.
Right.
There's no reason just to throw things away.
Linda made a good suggestion in the chat about bar soaps, bar shampoo, and the alternatives like that don't come in plastic. We get our laundry pods from a company that they don't come in plastic, come in a cardboard box. And same with our toilet paper and paper towels.
Who gives a crap, right?
They don't come wrapped up in plastic, all kinds of plastic. And
where do you find that?
Who gives a crap is the name of it.
It's online. I don't know that it's sold locally.
Yeah, and they wrap each roll in paper and the box. Everything's recycled. It's great. How does this tie to climate change? This whole concept?
Well, again, sort of overconsumption is one thing, and you know, just leading to all the manufacturing to make all this stuff that we only use once or twice, and then it ends up in the landfill. It's sort of a very vicious, multi-level cycle of, you know, emissions, air quality, using our raw materials in ways that, you know, aren't sustainable. They're extraction industries. So it's all part of the bigger picture of climate change and environmental degradation. You know, we only have one Earth. All these materials are finite.
If we switch from using plastic to using paper, aren't we killing more trees? You know.
But they are an organic material, and yes, I think we do have to be careful, like Judy was saying, you know, that you're not tearing down the rainforest in order to make paper towels. So it's a tricky subject. It's certainly not easy, but you know, it's much more complex. But you have to balance all these factors when you're making these choices.
Another point I wanted to make that I had forgotten, I thought about it earlier when you were talking about milk cartons. Glass is infinitely recyclable. And remember the old days, you used to get glass bottles from the milkman? You know, I wonder if we're going to get to return to that in some way, you know?
Well, I know there was a dairy delivering in Newcastle County from Rising Sun, Maryland. I don't know if they're still in business, but they were returning to the days of delivering dairy products to homes. But yeah, absolutely. When you go out to shop, I always look for things in glass containers first before plastic.
The best way to save the earth is stop drinking milk and eating animals. So
that's another component of it too.
Go vegan. Yep. Go vegan. I was on a call yesterday. We were talking about this new digester they're trying to build here in Sussex County, and my answer was just go vegetarian. We'll stop a lot of this problem.
Vegan, not vegetarian.
Vegan, whatever.
I'm sorry. I'm obsessed.
Dustin, are there any other chat? I haven't been able to keep up with the whole chat box. I don't know if there's anything else we should cover.
No, nothing else on Facebook. Tish apparently has gotten into a fight with her kid about expiration dates. So the struggle is real out there, everybody.
I get into it with my husband. My husband is like, that expiration date means, you know, he swears by it. But I'm like, no, it's more like Cheryl, like, try it out. Like, does it smell bad? Is it really bad? Then use it.
You like Toucan Sam, just follow your nose, you know.
What about cans and canned goods? Is that a good recycling alternative?
Well, metal is infinite. Metal is one of the best recyclable materials. So
aluminum cans are good then. If you can't get stuff in glass, you should look for stuff in aluminum cans.
Mm-hmm. I would say so. I mean, I'm certainly not an expert on that subject, but again, one of the zero waste principles is to, try to use materials that are either degradable, biodegradable, organic, or infinitely recyclable.
All right.
And then,
was there anybody having questions on Facebook or here that's on the Zoom call? Oh,
yeah, or if anybody has any cool waste reduction things that they do at home that they want to come off mute and share, or type in the chat.
I see in the chat the plug for the movie Cowspiracy to encourage veganism. And I don't know, Judy, if you want to put a link to that food site that you have in the chat, maybe that would prompt things a little bit better.
I put in catalogchoice.org is one way to reduce unwanted mail and catalogs. We also talked today about thinking about your clothing choices, reducing and buying thrift, sharing with neighbors and friends as much as you can, starting a home garden, being more aware of what you're eating and using.
And support your local CSA like Bright Spot Farms.
Or Highland Orchards, right?
Eat local, yep.
Yep. And I like that this new trend is finally getting to the true mixed use style of living where, people can live, walk, work, shop all in the same sort of location. And hopefully that'll start catching on more too, because zero waste includes the miles that you drive in your car, everything you consume. I am torn. I have old cars, they're paid off. I don't want to buy a new car because I don't want to consume it, but I know it'd be better if I have any vehicle. So where's that tipping point where it's better to get rid of your car and get that EV when your gas guzzling car, or not gas guzzling, just gas operated? Do you have any direction on that, Dee?
I do not have an answer to that question. We'll have to research that a little bit.
Because that's a lot of waste, a car.
Right? Yeah. But since you already have it,
right,
there's something to be said for that, right?
Right. So I'm driving it into the ground. Mm-hmm. All of our cars, that's what I'm doing. I'm just driving them until I can't drive them anymore because I don't want to create the trash. I have this thing, I can't put big things in the trash now. It's like a lifestyle. It really has affected me. I have a bag with white styrofoam I'm collecting, like 4 different things that I put everything in. And one trash bag so far, I haven't even filled it in 4 weeks. So it's pretty good.
Linda, I see your comment in there, but I'm not sure what you mean. Do you want to unmute and come out here and be part of the conversation?
And we did have one more question from Facebook as well.
Okay.
After that.
There she is. Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. In Europe, the grocery stores have machines that take back your bottles and give you money for them.
Even the plastic ones, right?
Plastic, yes.
Yeah, they reuse their plastic bottles, but for some reason we don't. I don't know why.
This new campaign. Coke has this new campaign about their bottles and the lids.
Yes, and again, that's, we should all be writing to Coca-Cola because it's sort of a red herring. They're trying to encourage recycling, which is already at a very low rate. Let's say less than 10% of bottles get recycled. But so what they're trying to do is increase the amount of bottles that get recycled, but it's still fostering plastic, the single-use plastic, and which only can be used once, or get recycled once, rather than going back to glass or finding some other solution and actually taking responsibility for what they're selling you. So it's a very misleading campaign, and it's, I hope we push back on that campaign.
I remember when I was a kid, we used to get Coke in bottles, and you got a nickel, you took them back.
Mm-hmm.
You put a deposit down and you got your deposit back. You got the bottles back.
We got a lot of back in my day happening here today.
It's because you're surrounded by people that are a lot older than you.
We did get one more question actually on composting. And I think I know the answer, but I just want to confirm before I reply in the comments. But it was somebody is renting, so they can't garden or utilize their compost. So is there a compost drop off anywhere? So I know there's nowhere to like community compost, because as you said, the ones that we used to have were right up against communities, usually low income communities, and they got shut down because the smell wasn't being able to handle. But is there any way to take compost? Like, if you have compost?
I don't think so. I mean, there's a yard waste site, the Drummond was Polly Drummond yard waste site, but I don't think you can take food waste there. And DSWA takes your yard waste, curbside yard waste too, and they do turn it into compost. But we don't have curbside, food waste pickup where some municipalities do. So I hope that we get there soon, but obviously we're not there yet.
I think,
and I don't know. Sorry. I
think the question is if so, let's say you have like a home composting thing set up. Like I have a compost barrel, but you can't use there's nothing you can do with the compost.
Oh, with the dirt itself, you
exactly.
mean?
So is there anywhere that maybe you could talk to a nearby farmer, or talk to maybe Bright Spot Farms will take it.
Exactly.
I'll just keep plugging them. But but is there anywhere outside of doing something like that?
I don't know of any official place you can take it, but I would just offer it to neighbors. You might take it to, there are some community gardens like at Bellevue State Park. Somebody there might want it. There are some community gardens downtown in Wilmington, the city of Wilmington, and I don't know, maybe Newark. So you might be able to, you're just going to have to ask around and see, who would be willing to take it. But there's no official place you could take it. I guess you might be able to take that to the Polly Drummond site, but it's not something that's on their official list of approved materials. But I guess you could call it yard waste. If it's just dirt. I don't know.
Any other questions, anybody? Oh, it's Mama SEZZ. That's what I wrote down in the first place. Okay.
I typed it wrong the first time.
Okay.
What was that site again, Judy? Just so I can paste it in over on Facebook as well.
MAMA.
What do they do?
They deliver fresh vegan food, no oil, every other week. And I know first time I've ordered, so I have nothing to really brag about the taste yet, but somebody else said it was very good.
In reusable containers that you send back, right?
You send back the containers. They have a thing you send them back with, but I'm just tired of cooking the whole year, every single night. And there's really, even takeout, there's not much I can take out. So this is, we'll see how I like it. It's a little bit pricey, but it's a treat.
Judy lives on the forks over knives diet. A little plug for Judy. So it's health conscious and environmental benefit from that lifestyle.
So if I could jump in and just plug a couple of Sierra things here as we wrap up. It is Do More 24 today, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing about it, but I'll say it one more time. If you're able to donate today through the Do More 24, there are matching funds available to organizations like the Sierra Club who are participating in that. So we would love to count on your support for that. And then if you can't make it today, if you can't do the Do More campaign, we will be opening up our e-bike raffle starting on Monday. So we had an e-bike last year that we raffled off for Earth Day. We started a little bit later this year, and with COVID, so we're giving ourselves a little bit more time. It won't be raffled off on Earth Day. We're going to have an event in May where you're going to hear about the future of environmental justice and environmental organizing and advocacy. And we'll do the raffle during that event. But you can buy tickets anytime starting Monday until May. And it's $25 a ticket. And the e-bike is a lovely cargo e-bike. You can either have some kids on the back there, or you can put your groceries. It's got like little platforms and stuff to like put groceries on. And it's actually $3,300 value. So if anybody's interested in joining the raffle for the e-bike, I'll drop the links in the chat for both of those opportunities. And then just to plug, Don Brill is coming next week to do his live stream to talk about restoring the shad to the Brandywine River, the process that's happening. So just wanted to plug those couple of things before you wrap up, Cheryl.
All right.
Is that always Friday at 3 o'clock, Dustin?
The live streams for the foreseeable future will be Fridays at 3 o'clock now.
Fridays at 3.
Yeah, we didn't want to interfere with anybody doing advocacy down in the legislature. So they're not in on Fridays. So,
well, we appreciate that. Those of us who spend a lot of time bugging at those people. And I'm sorry we can't talk to all the Facebook people directly, hear your input. I hope this was worthwhile for all of you, that you got something out of it. It's a big national movement. There are lots and lots of companies that are getting on board with this. So I suggest every time you're thinking about buying something, look and see if there's an alternative that can have at least zero waste or eliminate the waste, that pays attention to that kind of thing. Do you have any final words?
No, I encourage everyone to check out our website at plasticfreedelaware.org or zerowastefirstState.org. And if you'd like to get more involved, just drop me a line through there. You can sign up for our e-newsletter, which will keep you posted on the legislation that we're working on at both the federal and the state level.
You want to put the link in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
And everybody should be able to save the chat. There's lots of good links in there today. If you just weed through all of my comments, they're in there, I promise. So if you click on the ... right on the side of the chat, everybody should be able to save that.
So you got to put e-bike in there. All right.
What's an e-bike? Electric bike?
Yes.
Yep. You can pedal too, but then when you need it, it kicks in, like to help you get up the hills and whatnot.
Yeah, so this one, there's no throttle, so it's only active if you pedal. So it's giving you an assist, and you can change the assist level. So anywhere from like a 10% assist to where it kicks in, whatever power you put in, it multiplies it by a factor of 3. So it goes up to 20 miles an hour, but dependent upon how much assist you put, it could just be basically just take the load of whatever you're carrying behind you, right? So it can be like a normal bike.
Do you have a picture that you can put up on the screen so people can see what this is?
I do, actually. So I'll just share the e-bike raffle ticket website here. So this, the Yoba website here, I can actually bring that up. But this is, if you are on the website, I mean, technically you could buy a ticket now, but we're like officially launching on Monday. So if you scroll down using any of these buttons, and obviously if you buy more tickets, they're cheaper. And then I see that on the back end and I email you over your confirmation tickets. But if you click on that Yoba website, it'll take you to the actual website for the bike. Of course, on Zoom, everything loads a little bit slow.
My husband wants one. I think he's going to buy a Raffle.
There we go. Yeah, so it's a it's a unisex bike. It is the color that is in the picture here. It is the teal color, and there's actually a motor kind of in the. Man, this is going really slow. like I have gig internet speed and this is going so slow. Yeah, sorry guys.
All right. That's okay. We can do it individually.
Yeah.
But it looks very cool.
Yeah, it looks very cool.
So, I mean, I can also just like do that.
Right. There you go.
So it's got like cushions on the back, right? If you want like kids or grandkids or whatever, to sit on either of the cushions and a little handle that they can hold on to. You can get yeah, totally. I think the weight capacity is like over 300 pounds. So or you can get accessories where you can put like bags here that rest on this cargo plank, or they have a strapping set that you can get sold separately, that will allow you to just strap bags over onto these bars down here, and then it's got that nice wheel cover so your cargo doesn't get damaged. So really great bike. I mean, Yoba is the kind of the cargo e-bike out there. So it's quite a thrill. I have an e-bike. Mine's a class 3, so it goes like 28 miles an hour, but it's not a cargo bike. But once you've been on an e-bike, like as soon as those mechanisms kick in when you pedal and you get that little like get up, there's no going back.
I don't know. I have a regular old bike. I ride my regular old bike.
There we go.
But this does look very cool.
Yeah, so it is quite a neat bike, and the battery lasts generally around 40 to 50 miles. So I mean, you can in one charge. So I mean, you can definitely get to the store and back, or ride a good amount around the park. So there's an e-bike bill coming up in the General Assembly, but this is a class 2. So this one you're totally fine. Class 3, or sorry, this is class 1. Apologies, this is class 1. So you're totally fine. It only works the electric component if you're pedaling. So if you have the ones with like a throttle, then you might not be able to ride those anywhere. But this one, you're good. Even if that bill passes, you'll be able to ride this anywhere you want.
Dustin, you want to explain the class 2? You can't use motorized bicycles on the trails in Delaware?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, right now you can, but if this bill passes, they could, like the municipality or the entity or the business or whoever owns that path could say like, no, we're not allowing the motorized, the throttle-based ones on our path.
This one would be outside of the scope of that.
Class 1 is good, yeah. So it's class 1. It generally doesn't go any faster than a regular, like a road bike could.
All right, you convinced me. I'll buy a raffle ticket.
Do it.
All right, are we good? Anybody have any other questions? Oh, somebody put a recipe up here, huh?
Zucchini fritters.
I better get that over to Facebook here.
I'm going to see what that says.
All right.
So don't be overwhelmed. Just take it one step at a time and try to see what you can incorporate into your life to move on that spectrum towards zero waste.
Yeah, and just keep the zero waste first state. It sort of rhymes a little bit, and just keep it in your mind. And I think it'll start affecting your behavior in positive ways. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks for having me on, Dustin and Cheryl.
everybody.
You guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.